Hi, I'm Missy with On William Street, and we are here to help you become a more confident quilter from the piecing to the quilting and everything in between. And this week we are going to go over a really fun gradient flower project. So if you are like me, I am not an artist when it comes to pencil and drawing. It's just not a talent I received. So when my nieces and nephews ask me to draw them a picture, it tends to be flowers for a couple of reasons. One, I love flowers. Any kind of flower, I absolutely love flowers. Second, a lot of flowers are really easy to draw. And if you've ever drawn that really simple kind of posy flower, where it's basically just a spiral, anybody could do that, right? So I have spiral flowers all over the place. So this is my interpretation of one of those fun spiral posy flowers. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a bunch of circles. Now you're wondering, it's like, how am I going to get all these circles? So it's a couple of different things. So I'm going to share some different tools that we really like, that we use for circles. And then I'm also going to show you can do this without buying any special tools whatsoever. For this project, you are going to need 5 different purples, so just a gradient, and it doesn't have to be purple. I've already made this flower in blue. I just thought, do purple this time to change it up a little bit. So you can do whatever colors you want, but you're going to want 5 gradient fabrics. You could also mix in prints into this as well if you would like to. And then you're also going to need a green for the stem and leaves. And this is really a great scrap buster project. So all of these we just pulled from our stash, and we'll have something really fun to build out of them. So now in cutting your circles, so there's a few different options, a few different tools out there that you can use to cut your circles. So there's some rulers. This one is by Creative Grids. So you fold your fabric into quarters and then cut your circles. And it's got your half sizes or your just like 3, 4, 5, your inch sizes on either side. So that's one option. You just use your regular rotary cutter for this one. Another option is this one from Fiskars. And this one you only have to fold your fabric in half. It goes up to 12 inches. And this one does include your 1/4 inch seam allowance into that 12 inches. So keep that in mind if you're using this one and you want to make sure that it's a specific size of circle. And this one comes with a special little cutter tool that goes into those grooves and circles around it. And then you can also use, and I forget what these are called, it's like a retractor? What are these called? Little circle cutters? Okay, I know we used these in math when I was younger. This one is Olfa. So this is a circle cutter. The thing that I really like about this is you can get really small circles. So these only one goes down to 3 inches, the other one goes down to 2 inches. This one you can get down into really, really small circles. So if you want lots of little tiny circles, this is a good one. It's got the cutter right here with the grids. Make sure that's always covered so you're not slicing your fingers. These are really sharp. And then you're also going to need something to attach your circles onto the fabric. So what we like to use is the Heat and Bond Featherlight. So you can buy this in the 8.5 by 11 sheets, or you can buy in rolls as well. So that's something to keep in mind depending on the size of your circles, again, on how you want to use it. You can also just use a glue stick. So this one is a Soline glue stick, but you don't even have to have that. Just a regular Elmer's school glue works just as well. And the last thing I wanted to point out is, along with that Elmer's glue that a lot of us have sitting around, there is another option for us to cut these circles that we all have sitting around in our house. And that is cups and bowls. So you can use different cups, put it down, trace your circles with your pencil even, or a fabric pen, and then cut them out and use that. So you don't even have to have these special rulers to complete this project. So we have some of our circles already cut, and we went ahead and we started with a 9-inch circle for the biggest circle, and then we went 2 inches down for each of the others. So we started with a 9, a 7, a 5, and then we're going to do a 3 and a 1. Another thing I want to point out on these circles, because we're doing a lot of layers on top, if you don't want to have quite so many layers as you're sewing or you're quilting it, or if you want to be nice to your quilter who is quilting it, I've gone through it and I've cut out additional circles in some of these pieces just to help reduce that bulk that is going to be in this flower. So now we're going to go ahead and cut some additional circles. So this one is going to be our 3-inch circle. So we're going to line this up right here. This cross is going to show us where that half line needs to be. So we want to make sure we line that up. We've got our 3-inch here. I'm going to scoot that down a little bit so that I don't waste quite as much fabric. And then we'll take our little cutter, and it's just as simple as putting it in the grooves and pushing it around. So there, oh, it didn't come quite. I didn't push hard enough at the end. So now we have our 3-inch circle. So I want to go ahead and put some heat and bond on that 3-inch circle. So I'll iron this on and make sure that whatever fusible you are using, follow the directions on the package of that fusible. But I'm going to hurry and just quickly iron this on, and then we will move on to our smaller circle. Just a quick note before you're ironing, if you're using a fusible. If you're using a glue stick, this really isn't a big deal. But one thing I have learned when I am using fusible, if my fabric is really wrinkled, that's not going to go away. That's actually going to be imprinted into it when I fuse that on. So make sure you iron your fabric first and then fuse. Okay, so for this last one, I want a 1-inch circle. So those rulers aren't going to be small enough. So that's where I'm going to pull out this one. You can tighten this, move it back and forth, get the size you need. I want 1 inch. So I'm going to come right here. It is nice and close. Make sure you lift up your blade. Pull this off. It's going to have your little point. So that's going to be your circle. So when you're doing this, just make sure that you're putting this in far enough to have enough room all the way around. And then you're just going to press. I'm just trying to keep, this one is takes a little more practice. I don't use this one as much. It takes a little more practice to use. You want to make sure that that center stays where it is. And now we can trim that off really easy. We have our 1-inch circle. Okay, now we need leaves and stem for our flowers. So for our stem, I've got a piece of green that is about 3/4 of an inch wide. And then for the length, this one right now is 16 inches, and then that will be trimmed. Once I put it on my background fabric and decide exactly how I want that layout, I'll just trim that extra off. And then for our leaves, this is super simple, super scientific way to cut my leaves. I'm going to take my fabric. I've got this folded in half, so I'm doing both leaves at once. Take my rotary cutter, and it really is just give it a curve, bring it up around, get my point up here, and bring it back down. And then I can trim those bottoms however I need to fit behind that stem. And there are my 2 leaves. So now we are ready to create our flowers. So I have my white background. I did iron this, but then we laid it to the side. So it's a little wrinkly, but it will be okay. This one is about 14 inches wide by 20 inches tall. And this project, really, you can decide however big or however small you want. It really depends on how big you want your flower to be. So if you're starting off with smaller circles and going smaller, then obviously you're going to want a smaller background. So we're going to take our flower, lay our circles out. And the thing about this is I don't want my circles to line exactly up. I want to skew them off a little bit. It adds a little bit more of a design and some interest in there, and more like our circle posy flowers. So, and the way I like to do my offset is if this one's going to be on this side, I don't want this to be on this side as well. I want to move it up, but not necessarily to the opposite either. So I want to put it in going in a different direction, and then this one in another direction, and then I can kind of decide where I want to put that middle one. So lay my flower out. We're going to rearrange this a little bit until we get it just the way we like it. So there we go. We've got our flower just the way we want it. Then we need to add our stem. So this one, like I said, we have plenty of room. I'm going to want to put that up behind. I'm going to use my glue stick to hold our stem down. So let's add a little bit of glue on here. And then place that up behind those petals. Oops. Okay, I'll hold that down nicely and then go ahead and add our leaves. And you're going to want to put the bottom of your leaves just a little bit behind the stem. It'll just hide those edges for you. Don't want it quite there, so I'll move it down a little bit. And the thing that's nice about the glue stick is you really can kind of do some of this rearranging. And I actually think I want to bring my whole leaf down a little bit, so I might trim off a little bit of that bottom, because I think it's going to give me a better, more of the look that I want. Okay. Then we want our second leaf. Make sure that you're putting glue on the opposite side for this leaf so that they're not going the same direction. Actually, I think I want leaves. I think I need to move down a little bit more. There we go. And another thing that I really think with flowers is I don't want my leaves to exactly line up either. Flowers don't line up like that in nature, so it wants to be a little more like nature. Okay, and then we will trim off the bottom of our stem. Get that little point that's sticking out. Go ahead and add just a little bit more glue if we need to hold those down, but then we are ready to take this over to the iron and iron down our petals. And again, just make sure that you're following the instructions on whatever fusible you are using. For this feather light, what I have learned is you can over iron it. So you really want to make sure that you're following those instructions. I do a medium iron and I literally put it down, I count to 5 and I pull it up, and that is all it gets. So now our flower is all ready to take over to the machine and applique. And there are some different options that you can do with applique. My preferred method is usually a blanket stitch. So to me, it makes it look a little more like a hand applique look. So that's the one that I like. You can also just do a simple straight stitch all the way around the edge of each of these. It's going to make it a little more rougher around those edges. You can also use decorative stitches. This is one, if you're not going to do a lot of quilting on the flower afterwards, this one could be really fun with adding in some decorative stitches around each of those petals. And then also on thread, so you also have options with thread on this too. So you can either do thread that matches each of these colors in those purples and the green, or you could do thread that complements it, so it's going to stand out a little bit more. If you're doing a decorative stitch, then you probably want to have something that's going to stand out a little bit more. Or you can do a variegated and then use the same thread for the entire flower. And that's what we're going to do here today, is a variegated purple, and we're going to use that for all of those circles. Okay, our flower is complete. So we've got everything appliqued. We are ready to turn this into a quilt sandwich and go ahead and get it quilted. It makes a fun wall hanging. You could do multiples of them, make a cute table runner. And again, this project is super simple, super easy, and you can customize it to whatever you want. You can choose whatever sizes of circles that you want. You can also choose the number of circles that you want. So if you wanted something a little more simpler with just 3 circles, super easy to do. So you can find the sizes and the things that we used for this in our blog post. And then don't forget, if you're making our circle posy flower, post it, and posting it on social media, tag us so we can see what you're coming up with and the different designs that you create using lots of circles. If you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so that you are notified every time we post a new YouTube video, and we will see you next week.